again.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the DragonboneArchives. This is Goblin Lit, which means, yes, I love you too, which means that we are discussing a book. This time it was Amanda's Choice of Book, which means it was another bloody locked tomb book. In this case,
Correct.
it
Very
was
bloody.
Harrow the Ninth by
Harrow the Ninth.
Tamsyn Muir. So, if you
Yes.
have not read that book and have any intention of doing so, I would strongly suggest that you fuck off about now because we are going to be spoiling a lot of it.
Yes. So this is your spoiler alert. See, I made that just for
Danger.
today, guys.
Spoilers.
Yes. So we're gonna leave this up for a second, but yes. So we will be handily discussing the book. We will be going into full details. So if you have started the Locked Home series and not made it through Harrow the Ninth, we would highly recommend that you stop here, go read that book and finish it, and then come back.
Yes,
And watch us
we'll
after.
still be here on the live stream waiting for you. That's definitely a thing that's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Oh,
Or to
definitely. We'll be
YouTube, I
here
suppose
forever.
it's not. We
I
never
mean, we
leave.
always live in your screen. We never leave. Yes. So.
We're the strange little people in your
All right.
phone.
Pretty much. You're making me jealous with your drink. I wish I'd bought an energy drink, but that's all
You
right.
should have. Right.
Yeah, I really should have.
So, in the first book of this series, we had lesbian space necromancers. And in the second book of this series, we have lesbian space necromancers and the oldest polycule in the world.
Yes. And what happens when you try to attack the oldest polycule in the world?
It collapses in on itself in a horrible bout of infighting, same as every other polycule in the world.
And it's on brand.
Right. It's on brand. So, I am inevitably going to have to play the devil's advocate here. I did quite enjoy the book. I'm still halfway through Mr. Strong. Please, no spoilers. Okay.
We'll do our best, our very best on that one.
So, yes, I'm going to. I'll play the devil's advocate, even though I quite enjoyed the book, because I understand that a lot of the reasons that I enjoyed the book are reasons that most people won't. So, Amanda, did you enjoy this book?
Okay, so here's what I will tell you actually. So some fun things about Harrow the Ninth is that it actually took me like 2 or 3 tries to get through. When I was describing this book to my significant other, as I had gotten them to read Gideon the Ninth, I said, this one's a lot more intense, but also one of the things I got back from them is that they were like, yeah, this is reading on hard mode. So I can definitely see where you're saying, like, this is not everyone's cup of tea is definitely going to hold true.
So, I'm. First blanket statement, this is an inferior book to the first one. Fight me. The first book, it sort of
I
had
don't
the
know that
same
I agree.
extremes. I know, I'm sure you don't, but the first book had extremes. It had the silly little memes and in jokes and things, but it was all smoothed out nicely by Gideon's narration because you could tell that a lot of it was just Gideon's sense of humor throughout the whole thing. This one is focused on Harrow, who is not so fun. She's just really sad and really obsessed with necromancy, and that's about all she's got going for her, frankly.
I
And
like I like Harrow a lot because it really is an exploration of grief through a very autistic person's eyes.
100%, absolutely, but also, not a very upbeat read as a result of that.
No.
And the other thing is, because she's our perspective character, she does give us a deeper understanding of sort of all the metaphysics of everything we're dealing with, but her perspective also shapes the narrative. Because, like, book one, I loved because it was a fantasy murder mystery love story. And
Yes.
this book is a series of fiddly little arcane puzzles that Harrow has to pick apart with little history lessons in between to give you the context to understand your little technical puzzles. It's all very grandiose and all very minutiae.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from with there. The one thing, like, I think the thing that you're picking up on that I can agree with is that the narrative itself does seek to be complicated on the purpose of being complicated, right?
Yes.
Like, it makes sense because it's there. It's like a sensory experience almost of what it's like to grieve as Harrow, right? And I can see where that might not be like. It's not. It's well. It's not even that might not be. That's. It's not as approachable at all.
No, it's definitely like less approachable. For me, with the change in genre to this tech manual of a book, it loses quite a lot of the charm. And with the change of the narrator, it loses a lot of the character that sort of made the first book fun. And don't get me wrong, I like here we go. Setting aside the me being the bad guy for this conversation, I loved it. I really enjoyed the way that it was a puzzle with all these little threads, and you had to pick it apart and work out what was going on. That's my jam. Like that's ideal for me. But simultaneously, it doesn't necessarily make for a good narrative or an entertaining book, unless you have something seriously wrong with you.
Well, the one thing I do want to say is that the book is in second person, so.
Which I very much enjoy. You never get to see a good second person book.
It's so rare to see. It's one of my favorite ways to write. It has to be done right, and I completely understand why it's not, it's not as often seen. And I think that, when I think about the book, see, when you start to think about it, that this is actually Gideon telling Harrow what's happening through Gideon's second person perspective, because Gideon's the first person, right? The person speaking to the you is Gideon, and the you is Harrow, right?
But the choice to obscure that for the purposes of the big twist reveal or whatever is what took so much of my enjoyment away, because she was having to downplay all the sort of characteristics of Gideon so that they could pretend that it was just, Harrow going through grief or whatever.
Just Harrow. Yeah. And, like, again, especially, I can see where you're coming from with the first part of the book, that, like, it is hard to get through when you're first getting through it, and then you get through that first flashback, and you're like, what the fuck am I reading? Like, that was my first thing. I was like, what? That's not how that happened.
Why is this book gaslighting me?
Yeah, it was! It was! Oh my god. And I was just like, that's not how that happened. What's happening here? Like, I had to put it down for a bit there, and because I had tried to read it, and this is actually where I had started to get into the audiobooks for it, because I tried to read it in print first. And I really, truly believe you've got to do Harrow in audio first. You can't do it in print first. Or if you can, you know what? Good for you. You're made of stronger stuff than me. That story had to be told to me for me to be able to get through it.
No, as we have established, I am made of stronger stuff than you. That's we knew this already. That's fine.
Also, just as an aside, Moira, oh my god, I can't talk today. What a great day.
You want to kiss the narrator, yes?
Moira. Quirk could step on me any day, please.
Yes. In much the same way that most of the cast of this book could step on you and you'd be quite happy about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So,
maybe not Mercy.
There is some... Really? No, I was quite fond of Mercy. Sorry, tangent. Anyway, this book made me very angry many, many times over. And it was every time there was a dad joke or meme or nun house left grief, or it was just it genuinely made me it didn't just knock me out of the narrative. I actually had to physically put the book down because I was so fucking angry. And while again it's quite entertaining, it does fuck with your immersion quite badly.
Okay, so, and this is part of where, like, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about theory in this, and we're going to get into it a little early, right? Yes, Fane, you're picking right up on that. None pizza left beef, none house left grief. Yep.
Yep.
But
I'm
so
not
there have
fucking
been a
dead.
fair amount of
Hi, not fucking
theories.
dead. I'm dad. Sorry. Fair amount of
Is
theories.
that it's not there's not actually been 10,000 years that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is actually much closer to the distant past. But because John did the memory rinse on everyone, that's why, which is why we see so much of today's pop culture steeped in those sorts of jokes. And if you note, both of the beefs you have with this hat come from John.
Mm.
They come from John as
You
the
see,
character. Both of those lines are his.
yes. And that threw me quite badly as well because, again, when it was fucking Gideon making these silly jokes, it's like, here's someone who's young and silly and messing around, as opposed to God. This is the character in the Necromorph Prime. He's positioned as God within the series, and he's making,
Yeah.
oh, hi, I'm not dead, I'm dad jokes. No, fuck off. Fuck
But
off, John.
and I know we talked about this a little bit before. I mean, and in general, fuck off, John. Like, I'm gonna be so for real here. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn the spoiler alert back on. John, I'm sorry. John's my least favorite character in all of the books. And not that I dislike him, but of all of it, like John, no, you could just go away. Not really,
He's the
but like
worst.
he's got such angsty sad boy vibes. Let me tell you, I just can't. I can't. I can't do his stupid sad boy eyes. I can't.
Woe is me. I destroyed the whole universe. Woe is me. Yeah. He is. It is again appropriate that he was in this book when this is the Woe is me book. Oh god, yeah, it's just infuriating, and there's an argument to be made that because John is the sort of central figure of this entire mythology, and he's sort of the whole civilization in himself, he's created everything else around him.
Mm-hmm.
That would explain why the stupid fucking memes have carried on for so long. Because I mean, he's immovable; he doesn't change.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite an interesting piece of his characterization as well. The fact that he has a sort of arrested development at the moment of
Mm-hmm.
whatever happened to make him who he is.
You'll get into that when you get to Nona. It does definitely get a little further, but one of the things that I find really parallel to the two of them, Harrow and John, is that they're both really historically unreliable narrators. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
and so yeah, it's nice to see like the just overall. Oh, I know why this is doing this. Hold on. Now I fixed it. Okay, sorry. Oh, God. I was trying to figure out why I was having to transition the thing to get the spoiler alert. It's because I had in studio mode. Anyways, Amanda learning to use Streamlabs again.
We don't talk
But,
about Streamlabs.
yeah. Yeah, we don't talk about Bruno. What I was getting at with all of that is that I don't remember anymore. Sorry. There it is. I lost
Unreliable
it.
narrators, Harrow and John,
And John,
both
yeah.
constantly
But
lying about
Harrow
reality.
is aware that Harrow's aware she's not a reliable narrator, and John is lying to himself that he is.
Yeah, I don't know. I like from this book, there isn't enough to me to prove that he doesn't know exactly what he's doing. I'm hoping that
Oh no,
when I
I
read the
think he
third
does
book,
know
I'll get a
exactly
lot
what
more
he's doing.
explained.
I think he
Yeah,
knows
but that's
exactly
what I
what he's
mean.
doing. But what I'm saying
Like
is he's
I
lying
think
to
he knows.
himself.
You see, this is, I don't know because I think he would be less self-pitying if he was lying to himself.
Fair.
I don't know.
I feel like you could say that.
Um, the memes and the jokes, I forgave them. I forgave them in the first
Yes.
book, but the clashes, yeah, it spoiled. I wouldn't want to say it spoiled my enjoyment because I had fun with it in the same way that I have fun with it when you're having a normal conversation and someone blurts out one of these stupid fucking memes and you laugh and you go, I understood that reference, but it's detracting from the story, and it's very much detracting from this very grandiose story that's being told here.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is a
So,
grandiose story.
yes. I mean, oh man. the actual story, once you get past the things Harrow has done to herself, so that she doesn't have to deal with with what has
You
already
mean invasive
happened.
brain surgery?
Invasive brain surgery and creating a bubble in the afterlife, and just all of the bullshit that is basically 90% of this book. Once you get past all of that, the actual story is good. Like the actual present day, what is happening is fantastic. It's
Yeah.
just unfortunate that we had this book long self indulgence.
Which is fair to say. I think though, but for Harrow's character, like it does make sense that she has like. I think it's almost like a victory to herself and earning herself back. Like to me, the major theme for Harrow in this book is reclaiming who she is after Gideon, right? And so when we think about, and not to get real deep on you here, but like when we think about the work you have to do as a person to reclaim yourself from a major shock, like it felt like I was moving through what it's actually like to go through the stages of grief, right? To lose all of that, to gain it again, to lose it again, the fighting with yourself. And that characterization, while I can understand for like your typical like beach read reader, they're not gonna like that, right? At
No,
the
of course.
same time, for somebody who might have gone through grief, who's gone through like shoot everyone post COVID, right? Like to
Yeah.
feel like the emotional pitfalls, the ups, the downs, all of it, like that part I really did enjoy. The one thing I do want to say, and we're not talking about Nona this episode, obviously, but there was an interview I'd come upon where Muir was talking about having been writing Nona during the pandemic and how those two things kind of impacted. And we'll get to that when we get to that there, but I was just thinking about it as we were talking about it, like the exploration of grief in this book is really well done. Like it's cathartic.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is, but it's also very much like dealing with real grief. It's frustrating
It
because it
is.
is one step forward, two steps back. It's infuriating. And in much the same way that I get annoyed by the breaks in the story to go off and make a silly joke, I also get annoyed when it's, pages upon pages of navel gazing and feeling sorry for yourself. Not because I don't feel like the character has earned it. She absolutely has. She's been through some shit. But because it's kind of keeping us as the reader away from the interesting stuff that's happening. And it feels very much like, yes, we have finally got No Fane. I'm afraid I am not a huge fan of that particular series. I have tried reading it. It just didn't work for me very well.
What's it again?
He
I
who
don't know what
fights
the
with
acronym means.
monsters. Sorry, I was just
Okay. I
yeah,
just
that
didn't know what
one.
the acronym meant.
Yeah, it just never played for me. But I'm sorry. Back to what we were talking about vaguely. Navel gazing, sad all the time. No, I've lost my thread. I've lost the train of thought. Oh no, it's happened to me now.
The funny thing is that I'm surprised the coffee shop AU wasn't the thing that really like threw you out. Like, talk about a
By
writer making a moment where a coffee shop AU fits in her narrative. Like, it definitely did feel like a little bit of shaping there, but I was like, you know what? Do your thing, Tamsyn. Do your thing.
I that honestly felt less annoying to me than a lot of the other stuff in there. But simultaneously, it is very like what you've just described there is very much the problem because the whole narrative seems to be contorted so she can make these fucking jokes. Like that's
I think that
that
goes
is
back to what we
what
talked about a lot
great.
last time, which was that this book was written for fandom.
Yes. Oh, 100%. It's definitely written for fans, and it was written. She wasn't writing it so literary critics could pore over it and discuss the incredible, portrayal of grief. She has written it very much for people sitting on Tumblr having arguments with one another, and that's beautiful because that is
Yes.
the point that literary criticism has got to in our society. And on that, I must depart to dive into the river. Good day. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
Ah.
right. So, resurrection beasts, Thanergy,
Yes.
the river, God, I love it. It's fantastic. It adds so much more to the system that she's built into these books. I absolutely adore every part of it. 10 out of 10. The world building in this book is just spectacular. Even though it's so sparse and you're sort of so focused on the things that are happening at any given moment, the little hints that you get threaded through are enough to build out this whole universe, and I love it.
Yeah, I think she does a really good job at it, like, because I think that some of the books, especially, I actually pretty much avoid space opera overall because you get a lot of these narratives and they're just too broad to keep my interest, right? One of the things I think that
Yeah,
she does really well, especially in pacing, we're like right down to like a 1 inch square, is the way that these things interact with the characters' lives in a way that's kind of really true to how things happen in like your real life, right? In that like we're
absolutely.
steeped in our lives themselves, but at the same time we're not like we don't have life doesn't happen on this big grandiose scale. It happens right here and now. And I thought that was a really
Absolutely.
well executed part of it.
That is something she does so well. Like, I have been consistently impressed with how she's made what should be one of these huge epic stories into a very personal story that you can engage with as a person, as opposed to having to deal with these grandiose concepts and things. Although, of course, I'm also about to complain that all this dense arcanum that they're adding in, the resurrection beasts and the Thanergy and the, all the stuff I just said I love, it clogs up the book so badly because it's
Yeah.
already so dense. Like the
Yeah, I
entire
know.
plot
You,
is like the whole plot is just one twisted, weird little bit of magic piled on top of another twisted. It's like, okay, so there's a soul possessing this sword, and also you're using this sword to destroy planets so that the dead ghosts of other planets that we've already killed can't eat those planets to get stronger. But also you have to fight them in the river, which is actually where all the dead go. But actually, they have to be forced into the bottom of the river into what may or may not be hell. But actually, it just keeps on piling more and more and more and more and more and more and more on top of itself. And I think there's an assumption because this is book two, we're already bought in.
yeah.
And if this were a book one, I feel like everyone would have bounced off of it. Like, I think
Yeah.
you needed to already know and care about these characters.
I would definitely agree with that. Again, like I said, it took me several tries to read Harrow the first time. So, like, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. And, like, I spent so much of Harrow mad missing Gideon my first read throughs. And then I had to, like, reread it several more times. And then start to, like, really
It's
grow
like,
on
wait a
Harrow.
minute.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, well, because you're like, oh, man, but, like, Gideon sold the first book. Like, by all
yeah.
means, that
Gideon
character sold
was
that
the
first
star.
book. Yeah. And so we get into Harrow, and to me it feels like Harrow is like Tamsyn's love child almost. Like this is like it really though. Like think about it. Like the way that it's written in such an indulgent way is what kind of makes me feel that way. And I don't have
Mm-hmm.
anything to back that up. So if I'm wrong, that's fine. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. Um,
No, Hannah's her baby. There's no question about that. She's the specialist
her
princess in our
dark weird
universe.
little baby.
Yep.
Actually, funny about that. Hold on, let's turn it on, kids. Actually, spoiler alert, she's not. Gideon is. So, fuck God, fuck everyone.
Yes, child of God, Gideon, the porn
Oh,
obsessed idiot with a
God.
sword.
I know, it's so funny though. You get through it the first time and you're like, the part that got me was the eyeball, the algebra on eyeballs, right? So for those of you watching, and just to remind everybody, when you do the eightfold word, you it kind of shows through the swapping of eye color, and so what we're not getting is a big piece of like the history behind that, which you'll get more in book three around like some of the resurrection as it happened stuff. But in the
Mm-hmm.
moment when they're trying to figure out what was going on, right? And you have Augustine. Oh my God.
Augustine.
Augustine and Mercy during
Mm-hmm.
Dies Apate Major, which is the first attempt on John's life. And they're like, don't even realize what they're doing, really and truly.
Oh dear.
Like it's such a soap opera. I love that part of it too. Like their 10,000-year-old lives and the amount of times in which they have tried to kill him or done other such things. Like an evening planned down to the minute for 500 years.
But that's the soap opera of it is also what makes it work so well, because yes, these characters have been in each
Yeah.
other's company for so long, and it's almost like everything is scripted, and they know exactly how it's so clever. It really is. I had
Yeah.
so much fun. But we do
Agreed.
have to get to the very important point that two of these wonderful necrosaints did decide to have a threesome with God twice.
Yes. Twice.
And first time was for the very important reason of trying to, spoiler alert,
Oh, hang on. Hang on.
to
I gotta.
flash
There you
that
go.
spoiler alert. Okay. So the first time it was so that they could produce a baby that they could then use to break through the ward on the lock tomb and find out what the fuck was in there. With that baby, of course, being our beloved Gideon. The second time was to distract the Emperor long enough for Harrow to murder the original Gideon.
Gideon Prime.
Gideon Prime. Gideon Zero.
Yes. Which I do think it's interesting. Okay, or yeah. Okay, so I want to kind of tease apart part of that plot, right? Especially when we get to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Did John confess to being one of the having asked Gideon to do that in that book?
Yes, we established that John asked Gideon to keep on trying to kill her to get her. So,
Okay,
for
I'm
those
just making
who
sure.
are
Just
with us in the audience, throughout the story, Gideon the First keeps on trying to murder our beloved
murder Harrow.
baby girl. Yes, Harrow. Beloved baby girl is Harrow, obviously, because
Yes.
God asked him to, because God wants her to awaken her powers or whatever nonsense that you usually
I
try
don't
and
think
murder
that's what
someone
it
for.
is. I don't think that's what it is. I think that God. I think that when Wake possesses Harrow, Harrow might have the golden eyes.
When
There's got to be
Wake
some
possesses.
amount of indicator. Yeah, because if you listen, so in all of Harrow, Harrow talks about how much she doesn't sleep, right? And then we
Yeah.
get to the points in the river where Abigail's talking about when Wake is able to do things through Harrow's body, and it's
Mm-hmm.
when Harrow's sleeping, and we're getting the perspective chapters from what she's retelling herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think God's aware of that, right? I think John's aware of that. And that's the actual real reason. Like he's saying, oh, it was to try and force you into it. But I think there's a deep kernel of him that understands that that's Wake or some enemy he's made that's inhabited Harrow, and he's been informed of that in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. I could, yeah, I could vibe with that theory. That does make a degree of sense.
Yeah, because John is inherently the most selfish character in the universe.
Yes. Well, he's God, so that's a God, so that's yeah, that's kind of inevitable. He has to be the center of everything all the time,
Mm-hmm. Even when he dies or doesn't.
especially when he dies or doesn't. But yeah, sorry, this has all gone entirely off track. I just wanted to mention the fact that the younger lictors in the story absolutely lost their shit during the threesome because they saw old people kissing, and that was just so fun to me.
Oh no! Ah, old people should be shot. That's like one of the best lines in the whole book.
There are a lot of killer lines in this book, and oh my god, it's I think it's when Gideon finally returns in the form of Harrow's body later on in the story, and it wants to murder Anthe because Anthe's been trying to get it on with Harrow the entire time, and there's a little bit of jealousy involved, just a touch of jealousy involved.
Just a touch.
And then there's just some stupid pun gets made, and she's like, "Actually, I've changed my mind. We're best friends now. Let's get married."
Yeah.
And honestly,
That's
that's the
so
whole
good.
character, right?
Exactly.
uh,
No, oh man. And the part where she's threatening to rip Ianthe's ass bones off. You wanted to regrow you a new ass.
It was beautiful. It really was. And again, Gideon was the highlight of the book, even though she was only really active for a chapter. She was just excellent throughout. Some other special mentions I want to make are
Hmm?
Orthus, who was the absolute worst cavalier you could conceive of, but who, through his love of bad poetry, manages to save the day. I really appreciated that. I just love this idea that
Same.
when you're in that sort of metaphysical world, passion is what rules, and that's it was beautiful
I agree.
by
I especially
by
love
the
that,
power of
like,
his bad
it
poetry.
was. Well, that, and did you notice that he had to overcome his innate distaste of Protessalawis in order for that to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Which,
His innate distaste because
R.I.P.
this is
Dulcinea and R.I.P. Protessalawis, characters that I would love to spend more time with. Like,
honestly.
hold on, please. Hold on, please. I have theories. I have theories about Dulcinea that I need to discuss. So I'm going to
Okay,
sidetrack this conversation. You ready for this ADHD rail? Because here's
let's
the
go.
road. But,
Let's
okay.
jump off
So,
the
in a
rails.
couple of moments that Dulcie discusses Cam and Pal,
Mm-hmm. Sex pal.
Calamities and Camilla, sex pal, right? That is another polycule right there. They may not have ever met
Mm,
prior to that, but that was a
there,
polycule carried out in letters.
you're not wrong. There was definitely a whole ass relationship going on inside that.
Yeah,
Um,
like in.
in the sorry, I just need to take a second.
Go
In
ahead.
the last
Good.
scene of the book,
Hmm?
you have um, Camilla with Palamedes'
Hmm?
eyes. Does that make her sex cam?
Oh, I can't
Anyway,
answer that question. I play the fifth.
okay.
Oh God. Ah.
Oh
I'm too
dear.
far into Nona to answer that question.
Okay.
But yes.
So I really enjoyed the book. There's a lot of weird and wonderful stuff going on that is obviously a setup for what's coming next, which I have not read yet, but you're a bit further on than I am. You've read book three, but not book four, which means that when
Yes.
I start wildly theorizing, you're just going to have to give me yeses and nos, aren't you?
Hmm? Pretty much.
Okay, so given the way that this whole thing's written, I'm assuming no one's going to die off camera.
Oh, correct. Definitely not. This is a soap opera, so nobody actually
Yes.
dies.
No, everyone has to stay alive and show up at the most dramatic moment and possibly slap someone and call them a bitch. So
Yes.
that means that basically, okay. Side note: can I just say how obvious it is that the first book was superior to the second book? In that the most enjoyable parts of the second book were the bits where she was rewriting the first book for no good reason, and you were getting to spend time with those characters again, who were all fun and interesting. And
Yeah.
then you jump back to the present. It's like, hello, we're 10,000 years old and have no personality except we like to smoke. Which, admittedly, after you're over 40 or so, yes, we do get that way, but still, it's a bit rude. Fucking
I
old
think
people,
that
we should
though.
really
I
show.
think what you've got to give that is that Tamsyn is like this book is written by lesbians for lesbians. So the reason Augustine has no personality is because he's a man.
You're not wrong in that. I don't think any of the men really had a lot of personality in this book, or the previous book, with the exception of abusive dad and gay best friend, pal, sex pal. So yeah, I get it. Like I understand that this is very much a lesbian book from a lesbian perspective, but simultaneously, there were female characters kicking around in the Mithraeum, and none of them were that great either. I mean, we had Ianthe, who we're going to have a whole conversation about. But apart from Ianthe, I mean, they didn't really
I,
say much or do much.
I don't know. I feel like Mercy was doing a lot constantly.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of getting to know them and their personality and things, there was stuff happening, but you didn't really have
Mm-hmm.
enough of a connection with them. Whereas in the first book, even though there was so much stuff happening, I felt like I knew each of the characters well enough to care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. I enjoy Mercy more as a character every time I reread it because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the stuff with her character is in the subtleties and in the way that she's really subtly written.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you would probably like her character more once we get past like your first read through of the book. Once you know what's going on, this is definitely a book to read twice. Um,
Yeah, there's so many moving parts to keep track of it because it's written in a way to very deliberately obscure everything that's happening in it. So of course you're going to need to kind of go over it a few times. So yes,
yeah,
okay,
like I
I
find
will
something new
concede the
every time I
point.
read it.
That's
Yes. But no, I can see where you're coming from though, especially like when you're getting through it the first time. Like, I think that a lot of the writing is meant to give you an emotion for each character. Like, you just Mercy on your first read through, you're designed to hate. Like, she just hate. Like the first thing she does is disconnect Harrow's spine,
yeah.
her nerve,
Well,
her dorsal nerve to her spine.
yeah, but I mean, I would like to say that made me hate her, but I like the Ant in the first book, so of course I had no issues whatsoever with Mercy in this book. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And like I think that another thing about Mercy that I'm starting to like really kind of enjoy about her a little bit is that, like she's a really innately jealous person. And I
Mm,
think that really sets the tone of her relationship with Harrow. The first time they go in the river, Mercy goes, she's doing theorems in the river. John, that's not possible. Mercy, it's happening. Right? And I think that like one of the things that Mercy takes a lot of pride in herself is her intelligence, her capability, right? She taught
mm,
herself every inch of the human body over 10,000 years to have Harrow, who in her mind is 9 years old, is just a baby. This is a child, a thing she's never wanted, right? Be already
mm.
better than her. Like that colors
Yes,
their
and
whole relationship in such a way.
absolutely. Because yeah, it's just such jealousy so early on, so deeply rooted. It's wonderful. It's like, no, I'm not trading my replacement. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, basically, I think you're right. You're definitely picking up on that she felt like she was being replaced because and especially the end when we get to like when she's talking to Augustine in that final scene with Augustine in the tableau, right? And you have
Mm,
unlovable Mercy, Mercy who's never felt a moment of passion. She's fully aware that she is a flat character in that way, and I like that about her.
mm.
And this is where I get to show you adoration, and it's like it's very much like that just I loved it. I loved her just fucking trying to kill God. Like, this is my biggest moment of passion. The most jealous
Hmm.
character in the room because she wants to be perceived as cool and collected. But every time we talk about her face, her eyes are storm clouds.
Hmm. She, I think it's difficult as well because they all have, like you're talking about passion. They've obviously all got these deep-seated resentments that have been going on for so long. It's gotten past the point where there could be any rational resolution to anything. Like it's just rage. Every single one of them is just so angry all the time. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
include
And
the
it's like
new,
archaic, bone deep anger.
yeah, and it's but the fun thing is, of course, we have our new lictors coming in. We've got our Harrow and we've got our Ianthe, and they're both exactly the same because their grief's raw and they've just arrived from having been through some real shit to get to where they are.
Literally eating hearts
So
out.
yeah, so we've got just two sets of very unhappy people who clearly looking into their future and the people around them are not going to get happier. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah. I did
Okay, you want to
enjoy
talk
the
about it?
Mithraeum being the like pressure cooker of it all too. Like,
That was good. Having them all contained in
also
that
John is
small
such a
cube.
slut.
Sorry?
John is a slut. You know why the commander, the commander of the Erebos doesn't want him to leave, right? It's because they're fucking.
Really? You think? Yeah, probably. He seems to be fucking everyone, honestly. I mean,
He's
he
God.
just. Yeah. He's God.
He
He
just
can
wants
fuck
to
who
get
he
his
likes.
supernatural freak on.
And he does. Frequently. With everyone. And anyone.
Hmm.
And. Yeah. Two things we need to talk about. One of them is the body. The other one is Anthony, who,
Okay.
given any number of options, will always choose the single worst one. That was a nice little bit description by our girl Gideon, who was just like, yeah, of course, there's an evil choice. Of course, Anthony's going to pick it. What else would she do?
Yeah, they're floating above it all, trying to decide which is the most evil choice to pick.
It's like, do I kick the baby? Do I set the orphanage on fire? Do I kick the baby? Do I set the orphanage on fire? I set the baby on fire and kick it into the orphanage. Hooray! She's just the. You understand her logic, which is the really frustrating thing, because she is sort of framed
Yeah.
herself as this logical character. Like, I make choices based on what's best, as opposed to how I'm feeling about it. And yeah, the choices that are best are just consistently the worst fucking choices, just every single time.
Yeah, definitely. I did learn to love her a lot more in Harrow, though. Like, so she. I think the thing that, like, really happens for her character, she gets everything she's ever wanted. And she's not happy about it. She is not happy about it.
This is it. I'm finally out of my sister's shadow. I'm finally the most important person in every room I walk into. I've got all the power I've ever wanted, and well, it was like we were talking about with all the other characters. They're all still upset and unhappy and mad about it. And it doesn't matter that you get everything you want. If you're a fundamentally unhappy person, you're going to remain a fundamentally unhappy person.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And, like, I think there's a lot to be said about her consumption of Nabiria's turn, too. Like, and her getting what she wanted. Nabiria's turn, like, they were essentially a triad that Niente didn't want. And so in becoming a lictor, she takes one of her biggest problems out of the picture wholesale, right? And so it's really interesting, like, the consumption of him amongst it all, but at the same time, like, you can see little bits of him in all of it, right? And, like, she talks about in the scene before the dinner how he would have been able to sew this hem in minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how effective that would have been. And it's like the way she goes back and forth on him as a person, like, okay, well, he did have utility to me, right? But also at the same time, he was in the way of me being as close to my sister as I wanted to be. Because, incest.
Don't say it. Oh, Jesus. I didn't have a mouthful of juice this time. I couldn't do the spit take for you. I'm sorry.
Spit take. It's okay. No worries. I'll get you with it another time.
I have no doubt whatsoever you're going to get me with it another time. Yes, he was in the way of her being as close to her sister as she wanted to be, and frankly, that's probably for the best.
Yeah. Well, and so, like, now Ianthe can never go home, though, right? With the RB, with the Resurrection Beast, she can never go home and have... So she thought she got everything she wanted in becoming a lictor, but it actually ended up taking everything away from her. And, we have the scar from the battle with Kitharea, right? Where we have the arm for so long that's not Ianthe's. And that's Ianthe as a person. If it's not mine, I don't want it. Right? And so we have Augustine, who's like, it's all psychological, chick. It's all psychological. Which, like, I've definitely met guys at that age who are, like, so, like, he's a stuck-up hipster professor is who he is, right? And he plays that so well. He's like, oh, I'm so cool smoking my cigarettes. My man, you are the most boring person in this room. Don't play games with me.
That's so true. It's so sad, but it's so true.
And, like, what it really comes down to is, like, you think about it, and, like, bro, you've been alive for 10,000 years, and you can't help and they realize the issue here, right? And it's because he's not paying any actual attention to her. But the issue here is that arm is not hers.
Yeah, and she needs to have everything be hers. And that's very much her driving motivation. Like, everything has to be about her. It has to be her.
Mhm.
Harrow has to follow. Harrow is, so powerful and so special. Therefore, she has to belong to Yanthi. Everything's
Exactly.
good. Yeah,
And she is powerful
it's
and special. And Ianthe knows that.
yeah. Like, there's no denying it. She's not in. She's not delusional because, again, she's prides herself on being logical and thinking everything through. But she still has this overwhelming desire to possess anything that is of value. And
Hmm.
yeah, I suppose in the world that they're living in now, that is the only thing that has value, isn't it?
Yeah. She's a magpie, really. Like, think about the rooms she picked. Gold,
Yeah, that's
Lux.
it. So
And the
shiny,
naked
so full of
portraits,
naked people.
though. Oh my god.
It was nice
I
touch.
love that part so much. Harrow being a prude. Respect. I love that for you. She is a nunlet to the end.
She truly is, and it's funny every single time. Which was also why I was just stunned alongside Gideon when she kissed Anthony early on in the book to try and check her jaw. And it was just like, really? You're doing that? Really?
Yeah. Which, if you imagine, like, that definitely opened every door for Yanthe to think that there was some sort of conflict with Harrow, and just like, no, it's just Harrow's just really fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
but
Well, that was it. There was a sort of running joke that everyone just thought Harrow was insane, and that is probably a contributing factor to everyone thinking Harrow was insane because that was pretty crazy.
so the one thing that I did want to kind of get to on that point, though, and that I wanted to ask you when I was reading, so when we talk about Harrow saying that she's insane, right, and the memory rinse, there was a part of me upon my first couple of read-throughs that thought that was only to that narrative, but then Gideon also assesses the insanity at one point and how Harrow thinks she's insane. So I have to wonder if that is actually true to narrative.
Okay, so
And
here's the
it's go ahead.
issue. We've got necromancers, yeah? So
Yeah.
the idea of someone being haunted isn't out of the question. And then we're dealing with these huge, mighty spiritual entities that are at work as well, particularly the body, which is something that she has a very close contact with, very close connection with, and who we see as sort of her primary hallucination throughout much of the story. And I get the sense that this isn't the first time she has seen the body outside of where it should be. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like she has probably, if I'm being entirely honest, I suspect that a lot of the, I suspect that Harrow is schizophrenic, that she has been having some hallucinations beyond the ones that are spiritually induced, but because of the density of spiritually induced things happening around her, it's going to be very difficult to pick apart what is her brain fucking with her and what is the universe fucking with her.
Right. And when we assess like she's the genocide of her race, or not her race, her
Mm,
generation, right? 200 dead
that's,
children.
that's it. To create the perfect necromancer, let's just wipe out all the other kids in the world. Yes, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. Except the one that won't die. Then we don't know why she won't die, but that'll come up later.
It feels to me like Gideon's got her dad's healing abilities, which is to say, complete
Oh, yeah.
resurrection every time. And I think the only reason that
Actually,
she has not resurrected is because her soul is somewhere else at the moment and can't get out and get back to the body.
well, okay, so I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on this. So when we get to the very end scene of Harrow, the very last couple
Mm,
bits, and Harrow talks about bedding down in the coffin with
yes.
Frontline Titties of the Fifth, which is not even a real publication, Nav, and the sword.
It
Do you
felt
think?
like it felt like it was a special little place that Gideon had made for her.
I don't agree. Okay,
Okay.
here's what I think. So we have the body. And the body, yes, Frontline Titties of the Fifth.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So
that
the
is
body
exactly what you had.
is AL, right? The body's AL. We know that. That is
Yes.
established fact. and we listen to, so this right as the bubble's collapsing, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have Dulcinea telling Harrow that, well, Abigail's not exactly right. I know a thing about beguiling a corpse, right? And that's at the
Right.
very end of when the bubble's collapsing. She doesn't. We don't actually get the dialogue from Dulcinea, but she does hint to Harrow that there's a secret third thing that could happen at the end of this. And then
Right.
they talk for a second, but we don't get the dialogue. Dulcinea says something, and then we cut back into the present.
That's right. Yes.
And I think personally, I think what's happening there is that Harrow, because also another thing that I thought about after is that one of the reasons why John wants Harrow dead is that she could become a revenant if she's not mentally there.
Yes.
Okay, so this establishes for us that something else could possess Harrow,
Right.
right? John's deathly afraid of several things, and one of them being
Yes.
AL. And so I have to wonder if in that moment she's actually genuinely going back to, like, the magazine is a hallucination of her own mind. She's making space for AL to possess her, right?
Right.
Because
That makes sense.
she's connected to it in that way. And so when we think about that, right, by extension, AL is the literal soul of a planet. So that's going to
Yeah, we can get
cast
to that in the
any
book.
additional souls. That's going to cast any additional souls in there out.
Right. That makes sense. You see, I was also thinking in terms of it maybe being the place where the coffin. I feel like that's obviously sort of the pivotal place for Harrow. Like that's a very special place for
Mm-hmm.
her. And I was thinking in terms of maybe being almost integrated into her like spiritually. Like this idea that if
Yeah.
she's not fronting, she's in this special place inside her. And that's also maybe where we had Gideon shunted to every time that Harrow's at the front. So it doesn't contradict what you're saying, but it's also like it kind of makes a degree of sense that they've both been there.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, I
Mm.
see what you're saying now. That makes it. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I like it. I like it.
Okay, I
So,
think that works.
um, yeah. No, I just like the body. Though, okay, here's one other thing I wanted to point out, and this is the body in Ianthe. All right,
Mhm.
Kitharea's body this time, though. In that final scene where Ianthe tells Harrow to go back to bed, and Harrow's like, her fucking body is under my bed. Do you think Ianthe was gaslighting her?
Yes, I very much do because they basically said it.
Yeah.
Like Gideon basically said, "This bitch lied to you about there being a body under your bed."
Yes. Yes. I was like, I was listening to it, and like, I'm just like, is it though? Like, and if so, how many times has she been gaslighting her? Right? Because once you
Well, this
establish a
is
pivotal point, how far does it go back to?
this is the problem. The other problem is that Harrow very much consented to be gaslit by her as well because she involved her in the grand operation to remove Gideon from her. So it's kind of
Yes.
we've already established that she is lying to Harrow, but some of it's at Harrow's behest. So it's difficult to
Mm-hmm.
draw a line and say this is where it's appropriate and this is where it isn't.
And let's be honest, the Anthe's just going to do it regardless.
Yeah. Yanthe's going to do what makes Yanthe happy, and a lot of the time that's not good stuff.
And what
So
makes Anthe
you're
unhappy, unfortunately.
yes. You mentioned that AL or Elect or whatever she's being called, Billy. There were a lot of different names for her throughout this book. Was the soul of a planet. That was that didn't come up in this book. I'm assuming that's from the next book.
Hmm.
Did you just spoil me?
You could probably allude it. It's not a
Okay.
spoiler.
No,
It's
well,
very quick confrontation. So hold on, let's think about this here. Right? Okay. You could probably suss this out on a second read without me telling you. Right? So
I will say
Dominicus, right, goes out.
Mm,
John is the only being left in the universe. John somehow has a cavalier.
yes.
There's no one else in the universe. Resurrection beasts are created by the death of a planet.
Yes.
The only thing he has ever feared is AL.
Yes. The Resurrection Beast. Yes. No, I did get to that point
I
myself.
feel
I
like
had
you
worked
could.
out.
Yeah.
I had worked out that AL was a Resurrection Beast. I just don't think it was in the text. That right. I think
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
I was
me
a
coming to the
little
conclusion
soft
as opposed to
spoiler.
thinking,
Real
yeah,
soft.
yeah.
Real soft. My bad.
It's a
I've been
spoiler in the
doing real
sense
good.
that like we'd worked it out. Like we'd worked it out, but yeah, now it's confirmed. But yeah, no, AL is definitely
Yeah.
the Resurrection Beast of Earth. Like that's clearly what she is, and also clearly where John is getting all this power from as well. Because instead of it just being another person that he's can burn for eternity for power, he's got an immortal eternal creature
Essentially, right?
who
So when we
swaps
think about,
souls
like,
with him.
especially, well, think about it. In why Mercy and Augustine are so mad at him is that they watched AL walk around separate from John, whereas for them, they had to literally consume their
Yeah.
other half.
To get power that
And
he has.
so
Well, a
that's
fraction of the
what.
power that he has. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's probably why he didn't tell him how to do it right.
hmm
Because then
Yeah,
he'd no
because that
longer
would
be
give
ultimate.
him. Yeah, because he loves being God. Like, whatever else you might say
Oh,
about him,
God,
he
yes.
loves being the most powerful person in the room. And so, yeah, he's got this supreme power. He's worked out, if I commit to this perfect form of Cavalier necromancer exchange, then I get all this power to
Lysis.
burn forever.
Lysis is the term
Lysis.
that the
Thank you.
fandom has come
Lictorhood.
to.
Yes. Perfect lictorhood. Anyway, so he picks his resurrection beast, bonds with it, swaps souls with it, and that's why when he's being forced down to the bottom of the river, the fucking hell gate opens because he is a resurrection beast now. He is the soul of a resurrection beast. He is the physical part of the resurrection beast that has been brought into the river, and now the with the tongues.
I'm glad you got what I was getting for there.
What the fuck what's the word? The polyps? What were they called? I can't remember. The big bad mouths at the
I
bottom
don't
of the
remember
hill.
either. It was in the Baratheon, is what I know.
Yes.
I do love how much a botany influences this book. Like, a lot of the terminology they use, and you can tell, like, pre-resurrection, these folks were people in very white-collar spaces, just based on the way they talk. Augustine was for sure an old-style professor of some kind, in my opinion. Especially with the, like, wooded, very, like, how do I explain it? Like, almost Huntsman Lodge-esque feel to his spaces.
Yeah.
And the cigarettes. Like, he's going for a specific vibe for a reason.
Gideon was a cop. You know how I know? Because they had someone captive and chained to a chair, and he walked in and shot him in the head. Ergo, before he was resurrected, he was a cop.
Wait, who shot Wake in the head? Was it Gideon?
Gideon. Yeah, he just strolled in and shot him in the face.
Are you sure? I think you
I'm
need to
pretty
reread
sure.
that scene.
Who the fuck?
I think you should go pick that back up and
Wait.
read beyond there.
Well, now I'm just getting actual news. The ninth. Gideon the First walks up to Wake and shoots her in the head, according to the Locked Tomb wiki.
It's Pyrrha
So
de
maybe
Vey.
you need to reread the book.
No, it's Pyrrha de Vey. Pyrrha says it when she and Gideon are leaving the Mithraeum.
Oh, of course, they share the body. Okay,
Gideon's
yes.
already dead.
physically, the body of Gideon walks up and shoots him. God, there's so much.
It's important, though, for you to know
story.
which of the two of them is the cop, though. You get it later.
I was just making a shitty joke, but now...
Because when you get into Nona, okay, this is not a spoiler alert, but when you get into Nona, they refer to them by the first letters of their names. The lictors and the resurrection all of that by the first letter of their names, not their full names. So you have like G and P, A and M, right? It's important for you to establish who is who because it gets real fucking confusing.
Well,
and you're like, wait, who? What? What?
I have a cunning solution to this problem. I'm just not going to read any more books. I'm done.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Well, this is our last episode of all of our podcasts ever because most of our content is about books.
No, I'm just talking about this series. I'll read other books, but no, I'm done with this. No, I'm not getting more confused.
Oh, no, you're not.
Fucking train wreck. I'm not doing it again.
You are gonna love every moment that you felt like you were like frustrated with Harrow. When you get to Nona, oh my god, do I love that book. Like I love Harrow most. It's my favorite of all the books because it is a complex dissection of grief, and grief has intersected in my life a lot. But Nona is a joy to read.
Is it because it's even more fucking annoying and you can't wait to see me getting frustrated with it?
You're going to find Nona significantly less frustrating.
Okay. Then perhaps someday I shall read it.
Oh, you will when they announce the date for Electo.
Yes, because you're going to make me. I know.
I know. But it's been great. My favorite part, and just to tell this story for the audience, I was trying to suss out where Gray was, like, in the narrative, because they posted a meme that had Harrow the Ninth text Gideon text from Harrow. And I was like, all right, did you get to the oldest dad joke known to man yet? And Gray was like, I don't know, maybe? And I'm like, oh no, you'll know. And then the next morning, 5 a.m., are you fucking kidding me? It was the best text message to wake up to.
I'm glad my suffering amuses you.
Oh my god.
I mean, that's kind of the basis for this whole show, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So, I think we've gotten through the majority of it. Also, after we're done reading them, I think we should have an episode where once we're both on the same level of information, we go back and forth. I think that would be really fun.
I agree, because I would like to have a proper argument about all the new show, because, God, I'm enjoying it. Like, all the stupid little details, how everything works, it's grand. Like, if you're someone that likes hard sci-fi or but not hard sci-fi, sorry, but hard fantasy with complex systems and shit like this, you need to read this book, because even though it doesn't look like it's going to be, it's got so much, like, you should see what's under the hood of this baby. Like, there is so much going on.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, you can fit so much grief and minutiae in this bad boy.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so case in point, when I bought this book, all right, you ready for me to? All right, chat. Yeah, I'm gonna bring down the mood. I bought this book the day we had to put one of my ferrets down. This copy of it. I'd already read it. I went to the store to pick something up to comfort me. This is what I went to. This.
Well, that's concerning in a lot of levels. That's seek help, I guess. Okay,
I have a professional.
They are good books.
They're very good books.
Right. I am glad that you enjoyed reading your most favorite book in the world ever.
Yes.
What are we reading next? We have another book for you in a month's time.
Next month is June, which is Pride Month. So I thought that we might pick up The Priory of the Orange Tree as a suggestion. I
did enjoy Priory of the Orange Tree, but I have a priori knowledge of it.
Okay.
So I didn't know if you wanted to do something fresh or... Oh, no.
I have not read the sequel yet.
I have not read the sequel either. You know what? We can't really jump into the sequel without talking about let's do Priory, because Priory is a great
Okay.
fucking book. And
I
God,
haven't read
if
it
you
in a
think the
couple years,
lesbians,
so
if you think the lesbians in this one are dumb, just wait until you read Priory. Like it's basically you stupid fucking lesbian book. It's just 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. This is what we came for.
Plus, I was so enamored with the like. Sometimes dragons get compared to like lizards and things, and or snakes, and the idea that their natural predator is basically just a giant mongoose was just fucking killed me when I read the book. That was another one of those I had to put it down and walk away situation. Okay, Priory of the Orange Tree for next month. Okay, agreed.
Yes. It
Hang
is
on, I'm
Pride Month,
tightening it
so
up.
I was like, this will be fun.
Yes, we'll maybe do some. Yes, it's a
Oh,
long
it's a
ass
big
book
one,
thing.
Fane. It's
It
beefy.
is a big book, I'm afraid, but you will probably enjoy it. It's definitely more. It's epic fantasy more than it's like
Yes.
the more accessible stuff that we
Yeah. I mean, I figure we've done some books that we hate. We've done some books that are explorative. Like Speedrunning the Multiverse was an explorative book for me for sure. We've done
Absolutely.
some books
It's
that we
fun to
love.
do new stuff.
Yes. Plus, then we can read the other one a few months later.
Yeah, and that gives me an excuse to buy the other one. So I'm always in favor of shit that lets me buy more
I
books.
I'm currently using it to prop up the picture you can't see. It's on the
Good
shelf.
system.
But all right, well, guys, I would have to say I
So
think this has been Dragonbone Archives,
it has indeed. Thank you all for joining
not
us,
Dungeon
and we
Bone
will see.
Archives this week.
No, Dragonbone Archives. You remembered the name. Well done. We've only been doing it for how long now? Anyway, yes, well done.
Oh,
Next
all right.
week, Fane, we are going to be gossiping and playing Stardew Valley, I believe.
And I believe did we settle on the Amazon TikTok kind of thing as one of our
Yes,
topics for next
we're
week?
probably going to be talking a little bit about Amazon and TikTok and stuff,
How it all
but we're not
intersects to our
we're not going to give too much away, but we're going to mention a little bit of it. And then next month, shit's going to get really weird because we are. You know what? Let's save talking about that until the next episode. We can give them the rundown of what's changing
yeah
and what's happening and all the exciting stuff.
yeah.
Now, if
Sounds
you'll
good to me.
excuse me, I am going to have to depart because there is a tiny puppy committing great acts of mischief in the room over from me, and I want to watch.
Exactly. So, oh wait, hold on before we go. Obligatory orange.
Orange?
Oh, you'll get it when you get there. Boop.
Oh, is it the baby? Oh, it's the baby.
The baby.
Oh, it's a good baby.
He's been behaving the whole time, so I have to annoy him.
Oh, Zuko. Zuko is the orange of the Priory
He just
tree.
woke
He
up.
is. Poor little
You
guy.
see him? He's so sleepy.
Right. He is the orange of the cat tree, exactly. Right, I will see if I
Yes.
can get a beautiful puppy to come and annoy you all next week. I doubt it, but we'll give it a go.
Perfect.
Right, farewell.
Thank you,
See
everybody.
you all next time.
Have a wonderful night. See you next time.